Now I finally caught it. I'm breathing your life inside of mine. I finally caught it. I feel it. You've got.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lighthouse. We are in episode 9 this week. Thank you for making your way back to the channel, and thanks for sticking with me. We've been in the book of Mark for several weeks now, but today we are wrapping up the book of Mark, and we will be moving on to something else next week. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but make sure you come back and check us out next week. This week, though, I want to end Mark on a high note. I want to do it justice. I want to make sure we end on something special. I was reading through the concluding pieces of Mark, and something jumped out at me that I want to share with everybody. And here's a couple questions to get us started. Do you consider yourself a risk taker? Do you consider yourself someone who potentially has a hard time making decisions, maybe weighing out pros versus cons? Answer yes to these questions, which I think most of us would at certain points. Today could be for you. Here we go. Chapter 15, verse 42. It says this: "This all happened on Friday, the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath. As evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea took a risk and went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body." Let's stop there. There's only 2 verses this week, and what I highlighted was Joseph of Arimathea took a risk, and I immediately started asking myself, that seems unique. Why is it classified, or why is it shown that Joseph of Arimathea has taken a risk? Well, we go back to a couple questions. If you were about to make a decision, and the result of that decision could potentially cost you friendships, would you consider that a risk? If you were about to make a decision that could potentially cost you income, would you consider that a risk? If you were about to make a decision that could cost you your reputation, would you consider that a risk? If you were about to make a decision that could put your life in danger, would you consider that a risk? Of course, all of us would consider those. So know that the answers to those questions were also questions that potentially Joseph was facing when he decided to go ask Pilate to remove Jesus' body from the cross. Now, why? Why are those answers yes for Joseph? Well, Joseph was part of the Sanhedrin. He was part of the local religious leaders of the time. And these people, we got to understand, we got to remember, they were the ones responsible for prosecuting Jesus. They were the ones who took Jesus to Pilate and asked for him to be crucified. Why? Well, because they considered who he told everyone that he was, the Son of God, that he was the Messiah. They considered that blasphemy. You see, these religious leaders were still waiting. They were still waiting for God to show themselves, to reveal himself to people. And they did not consider Jesus as that person. And so they said, that's it. He considers himself to be that person. We don't see that. This is punishable by death. Hence, he is crucified and he dies on the cross. So when we look at Joseph of Arimathea, that he belongs to this group that is responsible for the death of Jesus, yeah, of course it's risky. If he goes to Pilate and shows respect for Jesus, he shows that Jesus deserves a proper burial based on Jewish customs of the time. It makes him look as if he's a traitor to this group that he's a part of. Understanding the context was powerful for me, and then I also started asking myself questions. Do I take the appropriate risks? Do I take enough risks? What do I even define as a risk? And I'd encourage you to ask yourself some of those same questions this week. I'm one of those people that if it's a big decision, I like to look at all the pros and the cons. Potentially, if it's a change of a job, if it's a big purchase, or big life decisions, maybe you make a pros and a cons list. We're always asking ourselves, what's the risk versus the reward? It's an important question, and one that I've been asking myself since I read this. Risk versus reward. Is the reward big enough, and does it outweigh the perceived risk? Now, the risk that we're talking about here has some weight to it. But does that outweigh the benefit? Does that outweigh the reward? In this case, does that outweigh the blessing? And see, I know what I'm praying about, what I'm asking myself to do is I feel like I need to take more risks. Because I think what society would consider a risky move, or risky moves, or risky decisions is not viewed as risky in the eyes of Jesus, is not viewed as risky in the eyes of God. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. So the risk that we all have fear about, potentially for a lot of decisions, may not be as risky as we actually believe it to be. What I'm doing this week, what I'm trying to do this week, what I'm trying to work on is taking the right risks, and not by the world standards, but taking the right risks by understanding what the potential reward for making the right decisions would be, the potential reward for actually being obedient to what Jesus has asked me to do, just to making simple decisions every single day that would quite frankly just be as simple as this. Does this decision make Jesus proud? Would it make Jesus proud? It's one of the core prayers that I always go to. Jesus, today, give me the strength to make you proud. Give me the wisdom to make you proud. And if that means that I need to take a perceived risk based on what the world defines as risky, oh Lord, give me the strength, give me the faith, give me the endurance, all of that to take that risk, because I'm believing that the reward, the blessing, everything that comes along with being obedient to you far outweighs any risk that the world could tell me about. Hey, the encouragement this week, there's no greater reward than blessing and having a relationship with Jesus. That outweighs any risk that we could possibly ever be faced against. Let's understand that. Let's pray about that this week. And let's go take some risks this week, the right kinds of risks. All right, I hope you enjoyed week 9. Come back, new book next week, and we'll hit it hard in week 10. Have a great week, everybody.